Are we live? We are.
Yes, we are.
Excellent, thank you. Hello all, I would like to welcome you to the first webinar for World Urban Parks Europe of 2026. We're hosting it for the first time myself. I'm the co-chair. My name is Claire Lanes. I work for the Rural Parks and I manage Greenwich Park, where I'm presenting from today on a very hot day in London. Our topic for today is very much Rural Parks themed. We have two brilliant presenters coming to talk about the Queen Elizabeth II Garden at the Regent's Park. It's one of the most ambitious horticultural projects undertaken ever by the Rural Parks in recent years. And I think they've brought a lot of learnings along the way with this project, so we thought it'd be useful to share. I'm going to hand over to Vittoria briefly just to cover some World Urban Parks areas, and then it will come back to me to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Claire. So I'm gonna briefly talk about World Urban Parks. I'm Victoria Martin. I'm the Global Secretariat for the organization. I'm currently based in Mexico, so I'm very excited to be joining this webinar for the Europe region. So real quickly, the organization is all about giving voice for urban parks and open spaces, and this is just an invitation to connect with an international network. So what we want to advocate for is parks for every city so we can connect with nature. So we're the umbrella organization for national associations, park and city agencies, university, businesses, and of course, individuals across the globe. We've started 10 years ago and we started with an organization called IFPRA, and now 10 years later, we are World Urban Parks, and we have a lot of events and just content that we prepared every month for you, so it can be very helpful for your management and for your daily practices. Now we have more than 100 members that are represented across our 5 global regions, and like I said, we were founded 10 years ago, and now we also have 11 expert committees that help us curate all the content that we deliver. We have 3 pillars across what we do: environment, health and well-being, and social equity. Throughout all the content that we have events like the World Urban Parks Symposium that this year is in Istanbul, Turkey. We also have a World Urban Parks Congress that we're very excited to announce that next year is going to be held in Canada in collaboration with Parks People. We also have webinars and podcasts, a Parks Week that we celebrate every year during April. And of course, we have an academy with different courses that you can take online. We also are finishing our call for our annual awards. Here we have 6 different categories. So if you were not able to participate this year, this is open every April. So please stay tuned for this because it's a really good way of giving platform for your projects and for everything that you're advancing in your cities and in your organization. And as I said, we're a global organization, so we are member-led but globally accountable. We have an annual general meeting each year during August, and everything that we do goes through our board of directors, our executive committee, and also giving voice to the executive office. We have 5 global regions that represent everything that we do: Africa, Asia Pacific, Europe, Latin America, North America. And they help us curate content like this webinar that we have here that is hosted by the Europe Committee. And of course, we also have portfolio committees that talk about different specific themes. We have, for example, the Large Urban Parks Network, Healthy Parks, Healthy People, Climate and Resilience, Children and Nature, and Parks for All Ages and Abilities. Throughout these portfolios, they get together, they talk, they connect, and they keep the networking going. So please go ahead and join us. You can be a park and city agency, or you can be a peak and professional association, a university, even businesses and philanthropic organization, or just an individual that is committed to this mission. So again, please let us be your global voice so you can keep connecting with international professionals and this amazing network that we have. And you can just simply go to our website, choose your category, apply and connect, and then join the network for the organization. So we're very excited to welcome you to this organization so you can help us keep shaping the future of urban parks. And Claire, over to you. Thank you for organizing this webinar.
Thank you. And just to say that the Royal Parks are a member of World Urban Parks, and it's a really important platform to share learnings with each other across the world. So moving on to our speakers. So today, talking about the Regent Parks project, we have Amanda Jane Doherty. She led the project management of the Queen Elizabeth II Garden at Regent's Park. She took responsibility for the contract management of the garden installation and has driven the garden's BREEAM certification process, the world's leading sustainability assessment scheme. We also have Matthew Pottage. He's our head of horticulture and landscape strategy at the Royal Parks. Matthew is the head of horticulture and landscape and former curator at RHS Garden Wisley. He's authored his first book, How to Garden When You Rent, and is a regular panellist on BBC Radio 4's Gardens Question Time. He's also a trustee for Fulham Palace and the Chelsea Physic Garden. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Amanda Jane and Matthew to cover the Regent's Park project.
Can you see it? Our screen.
Yeah, just to bear with us, this is a whole new streaming service for us. So we're just bedding into it and getting used to it, everyone. So we'll be with you in a second.
And the heat wave isn't helping matters.
Can you see the presentation, Claire?
Not yet. Oh, hang on. Oh, Victoria's here. Okay.
Can you try sharing it again, please?
Bear with us. I think this has worked.
There we go.
Okay.
Is that all good?
Yes. Can you just try changing the slide just to make sure that it's working? It didn't change for me.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. It's working now.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for your patience. Yes, it's a real privilege to be here this morning to talk to you about the Queen Elizabeth II garden. The photograph on the screen was taken earlier this year on the 21st of April. What would have been Queen Elizabeth II's 100th birthday, and Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, opened the garden officially. It was a remarkable day and yeah, a real celebration, and it felt like the culmination of a lot of hard work. Myself and many others were there, and it was a great celebration with our contractor and all of the consultants and everybody involved in the project. Yeah, thank you, Claire, for the introduction. As Claire said, I'm a landscape architect at the Royal Parks and been project managing this scheme for the last few years. I've kind of lived and breathed it for the last few years, so it's great to be able to share it with you today.
And I'm Matt, as Claire introduced, and today we're going to take you through the key themes behind the actual garden design, some of its features and a few things that we're quite proud of, and of course some of the challenges, which I'm sure will be of interest to everybody. And then we're happy to take some questions at the end. Right, so to kind of understand the garden, it's really important to kind of understand who we are at the Royal Parks and what drives us. And you can see here on the screen our vision. We are a charity, and we were formed in 2017 and have a vision to provide free access to beautiful natural and historic parks. Our historic parks, we have 8 of these across London, and we also manage Brompton Cemetery as well. And we do that to improve the quality of life, health and well-being. And that is absolutely of such an importance in a city like London. And it was really with that mission that the garden was conceived. And the setting for the garden couldn't be more significant. So it's right at the heart of the historic Regent's Park, right in the centre of London. So the site itself is
a Grade 1 listed landscape. It's metropolitan open land and a site of metropolitan importance for nature conservation, and all of that sits within a conservation area. So the park itself carries, that means it carries the highest level of protection available in England for historic landscape. So it's not just protecting its wildlife, but its open space as well, and that original framework and vision that shaped the park itself. Now, its history stretches back centuries, and you can see here in the middle of the screen, well, there's an aerial view of the park now, and you can see Primrose Hill just adjacent to it. And then moving on to the picture in the middle, it's a very old map of the site, which was previously known as Marylebone Park. So it was originally part of the Forest of Middlesex, and it was thickly wooded, full of deer. And for that very reason, King Henry VIII decided to seize it, and it was added to his collection of hunting grounds. Now, if we jump forward to 1649 and the end of the Civil War, it came under the control of the Commonwealth. And at that time, there were a huge number of trees cut down, I think almost 16,000, and land was sold off with the park leased to tenant farmers for about 150 years. And you could start to see some of that arrangement in that central image. And then if we jump forward to 1811, there was a new Prince Regent, and he had set his heart on a new summer palace. And so he turned to the very famous architect, John Nash, who developed bold plans for a rounded estate with highly desirable villas, along with his summer palace, and ceremonial route, which would take the Prince Regent to his other home at St. James's Palace. Now, these plans were never fully realised, but you can actually see today the kind of Nash framework and that processional roof, which survives. Now, the park, over a period of time, parts of it was opened up to the public, but it was 1842 before the whole site was opened up to the public fully.
And here we have a really nice aerial shot of Regent's Park today. It's really famous for its Regency landscape and the architecture, and it's very evident throughout Queen Mary's Gardens, which is a lot of what you see in this image on the screen at the moment. Queen Mary's Gardens is famous for its rose garden. So in the bottom right-hand side, bottom right-hand corner of this image, you can see what's known as the rose wheel. And this is the biggest collection of roses in a public park in the UK. So we have lots and lots of roses flowering in there at the moment. Queen Mary's Gardens is also well known for its Mediterranean borders, lots of seasonal planting and fountains and statues. So lots of horticulture and lots of different styles of horticulture. And then just the wider history of this park and its horticulture. So Amanda Jane mentioned John Nash. We also have the Avenue Gardens, which is the central lower picture on this slide. And they were laid out by Nesfield, William Nesfield, Markham Nesfield, his son. But there's also St. John's Lodge Garden, which is London's, I think, best kept secret, a lovely little secret garden. We have a community garden, an allotment, and a small winter garden as well. So there's actually a lot of horticulture throughout this park.
But it's very much a park for people too. So we have over 8 million visitors to the park each year, an enormous diversity of people at that. We have local people come visit, but we also have huge international contingent of people who arrive every year. So they come obviously for the history and the horticulture, but they also come to be active. So the Regent's Park is the largest outdoor sporting arena in central London. And there are lots of activities available, tennis, all sorts of pitches. You can take out a pedalo and visit play areas as well. But the site is also home to the London Zoo, and also we have a huge outdoor theatre, and along with kind of cafes and restaurants and other facilities across the site. Those are really important for us to generate much needed income, which helps us run the parks. So if you're into sports, or you're just looking for a nice stroll or something more relaxing to do, there's lots to get involved in. And for us, it's kind of understanding all of that balance is really central to everything that we need to do. And then alongside all of that human activity, the park really is a wildlife haven. There's a huge mix of habitats as well. In addition to all of those kind of formal features, we have grassland, woodland, wetlands, scrub, reed beds, and wildflower meadows. And there's a huge amount of wood mice, voles, newts, frogs, you name it. It all happens at Regent's Park. Now, we have the only confirmed breeding population of hedgehogs in central London, and they are very special indeed. And we go to great lengths to track and monitor those and take care of them. And they were established in the park before it was even formally recognised as a park. It's also home to a diverse population of water birds and the biggest variety of water birds in any of the Regent's parks. So again, it's a place where human activity and wildlife actually genuinely coexist, and we have to strike the balance with all of that in terms of safeguarding. It is a wildlife haven with everything that we do, and it was kind of that was really at the heart of what we wanted to do with the new garden. So back to the garden and the original, the aerial view on the left, you can kind of see the garden is right at the heart of the Regent's Park. It's bounded in red, and then you have an aerial shot of the old storeyard site. So this was very much, it's a back of house area, and we have returned part of our old park storeyard to the new garden. You can see the red line boundary, and it's around 2 acres. We still have a functioning yard next to it, but the site was previously an old nursery site, and which was completely inaccessible to public for about 150 years. And you can see just off to the side of it the very famous Broadwalk and the Avenue Gardens that Matt talked about. So the nursery facility was hugely important to the Royal Parks. We were growing over 100,000 plants a year at this location, not just for Regent's Park, but for all of the parks. And you can see here in the bottom left, an aerial view of the old nursery site, and you can see a massive collection of glass houses and various other buildings to kind of support that whole nursery facility. And on the right-hand side, you've got the old boiler house, which is one of the only features that have been retained in the new garden. So we'll talk about that a little more in a minute. But the site was hugely important, but it became vacant in 2018. So our nursery operations were moved to our new super nursery at Hyde Park, which is an amazing facility. And at that time, there was lots of discussion about what would happen with this site. And I'm pleased to say it was decided by our trustees and board that it should be returned to London as a brand new green space and be fully accessible. And it would also be a new garden to celebrate the life of Queen Elizabeth II.
So just to talk through some of the garden themes that we wanted to aspire to and get the site to deliver. So very much we wanted to honour the service of Queen Elizabeth II. It was coming up to her Platinum Jubilee, and the Queen was supportive of the plan. She was aware of this development. And then obviously once she passed, it was decided it should actually become a garden to commemorate both her life and her service to the country. We wanted this first and foremost to be a beautiful garden and a beautiful space to fit within this historic park. We needed it to be respectful of that Nash framework, but we also wanted to demonstrate something with horticultural excellence and a naturalistic style that's in keeping with William Robinson's planting philosophy. William Robinson was very much famous for the whole wild gardening movement, and he started his English gardening career at the Regent's Park. So to have that nod to him with a modern take is something we really wanted to try and weave together. It had to be accessible and friendly for wildlife. Amanda's touched on everything that's in that park, and there was a lot of wildlife. But we also wanted it to improve biodiversity and also have this balance that horticulture can be good for biodiversity. It doesn't have to be one or the other. In the face of climate change, we really wanted this to be a lot of resilient planting. The Queen was a resilient figure, so we wanted this to actually connect and to have a circular economy where lots of that building waste was reused in the garden was an aspiration as well. So we ran a design competition, and we appointed HTA as the lead designer for the garden. And also we worked with a planting specialist called Dr. Noel Kingsbury, who helped with all the planting matrices. HTA presented us with what they call moments of delight. So there are things from aquatic areas to ponds to wildflower meadows, really to create a mosaic of different habitats, which then presents an opportunity for a mosaic of different planting types. So for the keen gardener or someone more focused on ecology and wildlife, there really is something for both. And as I mentioned before, using the recycled materials throughout the design was a real key thing. And I think hopefully as you see this, HTA really pulled out of the bag. It's a beautiful space.
So yeah, I just want to say a little bit about that circular economy approach and what that actually means in practice. So we really had set out from the beginning to retain anything that we could within the garden. So anything that was worthwhile saving, we decided we would keep. And if we couldn't retain anything, we would look to retrofit it where we could, and then reuse materials where we could, and anything that could not be reused was taken away for recycling. And yeah, we'd kind of done a huge big audit of materials, and that was very much part of the design process. And the design team were obviously challenged in terms of making that work in practice. So you can see on the slide here, we have repurposed that old water tower, and it is now a garden folly if you want. It provides a really nice focal point within the garden, and you have a lovely balcony now. And you get great views across the garden as well. So from that elevated position, so it just adds another layer to the garden. It also provides really important habitat in the roof, and there's a huge attenuation tank as well in the old boiler room. So we've removed the boiler and we've got attenuation. So it's somewhat still a bit of a water tower, but it's a really important feature in the garden. You can see top right, we have pea shingle that we collected from the bottom of the glass houses. That's now being used in our lovely terrazzo paving. And again, we did a huge audit of all of the steel, and that was all meticulously inspected and tested and checked, and we've managed to reuse steel in our beautiful pergola structure, and also it's been used in the decking and the viewing platform. So that's, yeah, we're really pleased with how that turned out. And then in addition to that, one of the most innovative aspects of the garden is really the use of crushed concrete blended to create our soils. Now Matt will talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but there were absolutely huge stockpiles of material right across the site. And yeah, so that was again set at brief and something very important for us. And you can see here in the pictures as well, some granite sets have been used to create seat pads. And again, we also use lots of recycled material, not just from our own site, but from other parks as well. So we brought in a huge amount of soil from our Hyde Park site, which was used as tree pits and swales. And again, we collected up all sorts of recycled materials and paving left over from various projects or used again, you know, salvaged. And that created this really lovely courtyard by the tower. And I said, anything that we could not use was absolutely recycled. We had considered using the glass from the glass houses. It was obviously dismantled very carefully, piece by piece. And we thought very carefully about how we could reuse that in the scheme, but we didn't actually come up with a sensible option. So all of that material and anything else that wasn't used was all recycled. So yeah, Matt mentioned earlier, there were a few challenges along the way. I mean, yeah, we had quite a tight time frame to kind of create this garden, and kind of taking it from a redundant nursery to the garden that it is today was quite the undertaking. So working with that time frame, we had very much the end date of the Queen's 100th birthday in mind. We were kind of set on that, so it required us to do quite a lot of work over a short period of time. And as a result, we ended up having a demolition contractor in the northern end of the site, in the southern end of the site, while we had our landscape contractor. So both contractors were having to kind of dovetail around each other. And we had a huge amount of machinery and equipment coming and going from the site. So that was quite a feat. And I have to say our contractors managed that really well. There was a lot of coordination, but it ran really went really smoothly. We also had horsetail that we found on the site, and so that needed quite extensive remediation. One of the team, Vincent, became adept at spotting that at 100 yards. So that's something that we will continue to monitor. And if you're not sure what horsetail is, it's a very vigorous perennial and had, with potential really to overtake the garden. So that required a lot of work. Now, then you have kind of typical things that you would expect with a landscape project, issues with services, utilities, bits of contamination, and that was all very carefully worked through. But I think for me, what the biggest challenge really was around the soil blending and crushing, and just really dealing with the materials that we wanted to reuse. So we had huge stockpiles, and because we had both contractors working on the site at the same time, we were in the process of demolishing while we were setting out features in the northern end of the garden, and we were having to constantly revisit all of our cut and waste measurements and calculations to understand what we could deliver on the site. So we were changing the topography as more information became available to us. So we were having to adjust things as we go along. It was a bit of a juggling act, but all really interesting. And I think the schemes ended up all the better for it. We had some additional mounding that wasn't initially anticipated, but we were set from the beginning to kind of keep all of the material that we could on site. So that was really central to the whole process. But yeah, and just working with that crushed concrete as well required lots of testing. So sending batches off and having our soil scientists and everything come to site. So there were little, potential for delay here and there. But yeah, we worked through it all, I'm pleased to say.
So on our soil trials, so a big part of the demolition waste was the concrete that Amanda's just mentioned. We had over 1,000 meter cubes of crushed concrete, so a lot to work with. We worked with Tim O'Hare Associates, who are soil specialists, to help us work through ratios and actually what the soil makeup would be like and actually how it would be in practice. It has been done somewhere else in the UK before, a place called Knepp, which has a very nice wall garden. They use lots of different building waste and rubble. So there was kind of a pre-existing example. So there was confidence this would work, but we still wanted to do some trials ourselves. So we did some trial beds in advance, also at the Regent's Park, so very close by. And we worked with our garden team and our apprentices, and we trialed different soil mixes. So we had two different mixes. One was 70% concrete to 30% soil. One was 80% concrete to 20%. And ultimately what we kind of leveled on and settled on for the garden was a 75-25 ratio. So really high concrete levels, and obviously you'd imagine with that lime content, quite a high pH. So we're looking at about 8.5 pH. But really what I think the interesting thing to remember here as a gardener is what would those plants do in nature? So if one of those plants, say, self-sowed itself up a mountain, in a scree, in a rocky area, it would go looking for nutrients and water before putting on a lot of top growth. So what these plants have done in the trial area and what we're seeing in the new garden is they're quite slow with the top growth and they're putting down very deep root systems. And obviously that designs in resilience. So the plant is not overexerting itself. There's not lots of floppy top growth that has aphid or needs staking or falls victim to the first bit of drought, but they are slow, compact. They're grown harder, we would say, with these deeper root systems. So we have embraced what we're calling the slow gardening movement. These plants are taking their time, but that's fine. And they will be more sustainable and resilient as a result.
So we're going to share a video with you now. So you've probably heard enough of Matt and I speaking. We'll give you a little break. So I think... I hope you'll agree it's quite the transformation. Yeah, I just wanted to share a few pictures as well, which were taken a few weeks after the drone footage, which was recorded actually just before the garden opened. And you can see already just the change in terms of the planting at the site. It really has come on, and it's just so exciting to return each week now and just see how it's all evolving and developing. But you can see here, in terms of the design and the HDA plans, they had different ways of referencing Queen Elizabeth II, and some of that was through kind of subtle referencing on the site. So they had a serpentine path, which is very representative of her life as a mother, and then this much more linear central feature and path, which was connecting a reflective pool and a reflective space for sitting and enjoying the garden. And that very linear path was to represent her unwavering sense of duty as a monarch. And so you can see here in the pictures to the left and right, those two different paths. And then just the small picture down below as well is a really nice, much more informal path, which is through a little woodland walk. And the reason HTA kind of created that within the garden was due to replicate a little bit of a path that features at Buckingham Palace. So while they were developing the plans, the design team and ourselves, we went to visit different royal households and speak and walk and talk with the royal gardeners. And we had learned about this lovely path at Buckingham Palace that the Queen would often disappear off to with her dogs just to get away from it all. So we thought that was really nice to incorporate that here, because we had this lovely borrowed landscape of woodland edge, and it was nice to make use of that. And then just to touch on some of the other referencing to the Queen, there's some subtle referencing within the garden. So the terrazzo paving is poured in different sections, and that kind of relates to the years of her reign. And the pergola, again, there's a bit of a link to the Commonwealth. But we have some lovely decorative elements within the garden. So on the tower, which you can see here in the central picture, we have this beautiful iron metalwork, which kind of wraps itself around the building. I mean, we will eventually have some lovely climbers there, but it was nice to kind of improve the look of that at this moment in time until all of that's developed. But this metalwork was worked through. It was inspired actually by an embroidery pattern on Queen Elizabeth II's coronation robe. And we worked with a blacksmith who was an alumnus of the King's Foundation. And he worked with a collection of other blacksmiths all across the four nations. And each of the blacksmiths in the four nations developed all of the kind of ornamental elements. So you've got each of the four nations representative with thistles, the Tudor rose, etc., and the shamrock. And then Ian Thackeray, our fabulous blacksmith, brought all of that together, and I think it really enhances the tower. And then on the right, you can see a lovely magnolia, which sits in the central of that reflective roundel central seating space. You'll see some more pictures of that in a minute, but there's a really lovely hand-tooled, hand-carved inscription which sits in that area. And again, it's a quote from Queen Elizabeth II herself. And again, it's a really fitting quote about taking stock and reflecting and enjoying time out. And I think that's really what we want people to do in the garden. So again, just very subtle referencing through the garden, but I hope you'll agree. All very lovely. And actually, just want to highlight the picture on the left. You can see a lovely roof light, which is also in the tower, and there's a little nod there to Queen Elizabeth's love of dogs. I don't know if you can spot the little corgi, but yes, some just little playful elements within the garden too.
And then just to talk a little bit about the plants and their links to Queen Elizabeth II. So we did work with one of her long-serving head gardeners at Buckingham Palace, Mark Lane, and got the lowdown really on some of her favourite flowers. We know that she was a huge fan of magnolia trees, so we have woven magnolias through. We've actually found a cultivar called Windsor Beauty, which came about at Windsor Great Park, so we have that in there. We have a tulip called Royal Celebration, for that brilliant name, which is a huge, very showy tulip. Her favourite flower was Lily of the Valley, so we have that in our woodland areas. And we have things from both her bridal bouquet and her funeral wreath, such as rosemary and myrtle planted in the garden. We also were very lucky to have some agapanthus from the Savile Garden, which is one of the Crown Estate gardens. They were donated to us by the head gardener, John Anderson, and they've been planted in the garden too. We also have nods to the Commonwealth, which is something the late Queen was very passionate about. Things such as Cercis canadensis, obviously Canadian, Pseudopanax ferox and crassifolius from New Zealand. And that pergola that Amanda mentioned before has 56 upright pieces, which are a nod to those 56 Commonwealth countries. And then that sustainable approach that we mentioned before. So the whole garden has a series of swales, or sometimes called water gardens. They all drain down to this central pond. The central pond has these sloping planted sides, so great for our hedgehog friends to go and have a drink and safely be able to get back out of there as well. And that range of plants and range of habitats is something that really pulls together gardening and ecology. And I just wanted to mention some of the long-term and perennial nature of the planting. So there's lots of tulips through the garden, but we've gone with species tulips. You can see them in the image there on the left-hand side of the slide. We're hoping with that very good drainage, those will persist long-term as perennials. So we are still getting quite big hits of colour, but not with annual plants and not with bedding plants, basically. And the treescape in there, we've gone with quite resilient heat and drought tolerant trees. So on that central picture by the water tower, the pine tree there is a stone pine, Pinus pinea, which you often see a lot in the Mediterranean. And on top of the tower, you see a habitat box there, and we are hoping to encourage swifts and bats into that space. So hopefully you'll agree this has come together rather nicely with all these different planting styles. There was a lot from that original brief to fit in to one space, and working with Noel and HTA, all those design details and planting details, I think is quite something to pull together in one space. Just to mention actually also, we are on watering, because a lot of people have been asking us about, so as a sustainable garden, you plant it and never water it. We are proud to say we are watering for establishment. I think it's really clear to say that. We don't believe it's sustainable to plant something, water it once, and then potentially let it die. We do go for weeks and weeks without water now in central London, without meaningful rain. And we just don't have the summer rain to establish plants without additional water. So we've tapped into our borehole, and there are plug-in points for hose pipes and sprinklers. And we're expecting to water some of those plants for up to the first 3 summers, which is what we're calling the establishment period. After that, we hope things will stand on their own 2 feet, of course, but there's a lot of plants that have been paid for out of charitable funds, and it's really key to us that they do establish successfully. And then there's just a wider shot here with the meadows and how the planting kind of rolls into the natural meadows of Regent's Park. But what I think is exciting here, and I wanted to mention to you, is some of the meadows are on the crushed concrete, so very low nutrient, high drainage. And what we're already seeing is the grass does not have the normal vigor. So the grass is flowering quite small, it's going dormant, which really importantly gives space for the wildflowers to establish. So we're really hoping actually this could be quite an interesting thing for other people to follow with waste concrete. Everybody loves a diverse wildflower meadow, but of course they normally go wrong because of the richness of the soil. You end up with loads of flowering grass and no real wildflowers mixed in.
So I just wanted to touch on a few of the project highlights. Working with our contractor, we have delivered 1,300 volunteer hours. Our internal colleagues also helped manage that whole approach. So we had all sorts of people coming in to assist with bits of weeding and work in the garden. And we also had a big public planting day on a very wet November Saturday last year, but it was well attended, and the visitors planted over 10,000 bulbs on that day of the 250,000 that we actually have in the site. But the weather didn't dampen their spirits and everybody got stuck in, and it's been great to see some of those members of the public come back to see the garden now that it's been delivered. So on the learning side, we also had some great wins. We have trainees, gardeners had supported the project and received training. We had 20 apprentices were involved in the trial beds project. And we also provided 4 work experience placements for school-age students as well on site with the contractor. In addition, our contractor also delivered a brand new edible garden at a local school, St. Paul's school. And the children there were involved initially in the consultation about the design of the garden and gave us some great feedback, things they wanted to see in the garden. And it was so lovely to invite all of them back as well for a VIP sneak preview before the garden opened to the public. So yes, and then with sustainability at the heart of the project, I hope you'll agree the results really speak for themselves. We had a remarkable 184% biodiversity net gain uplift. And I think what was incredible also was our 80% carbon reduction when we've compared the scheme against a typical scheme. We had set out from the beginning to target a BREEAM Excellent rating, and I'm delighted to say we found out a few weeks ago that we were successful in that. So there really is lots to celebrate. But I think for me, what makes the project truly special really is, you know, being able to kind of deliver a brand new space for London, to kind of return a site that was completely inaccessible to the public for 150 years and provide a brand new garden within the Regent's Park, which is quite unique and quite different from everything else that's available there, and just provide that back to London and deliver real benefits for people, but also for wildlife too. So the whole project has just been incredibly exciting. And yeah, I just want to mention, we also had a lot of interest in the scheme from the off, and yeah, BBC Gardeners World kind of followed our project, and so there's lots of behind the scenes footage. If you're interested, have a look. The programme aired, it was live on the 17th of April, but you can tune in now on BBC iPlayer if you're interested, and featured Matt, who's obviously here today, and our very own head gardener as well, Fiona Pack, and you can see here both of those in the picture with the presenter Monty Don. We also actually took lots of footage ourselves, and there's loads of more information on the project on our own website. So there's lots of behind the scenes videos. You can see all of the concrete crush happening and the soil creation, as well as a short video on the trial beds and many other aspects of the project. So if that's of interest, please have a look.
So thank you, Amanda Jane. I think in summary, what we're really hoping and what is exciting about this is all free for people to enter throughout the year. And we're hoping that people will come and look at a slow gardening movement, starting plants small, planting with resilience in mind. And also if people are feeling really brave, reusing concrete and building waste and basically bringing a brownfield site into a garden space. Is it possible? Hopefully so. Hopefully you will come and visit this garden and love it. And thank you very much for your time today to join us and listen.
Yeah, and for me, I just feel like the quality and the finish of the garden is fantastic. Our design team and contractor did such a great job, and I think it just absolutely works. When you go in there, it's such a lovely contemplative space and just really works as a garden, and I hope you'll agree it's another worthy addition to the other very special gardens at Regent's Park. But thank you so much for your time. It's been lovely to present to you today.
Amanda, I think you're muted, so if you can unmute yourself, please.
Sorry. Mistake. So thank you, Amanda, Jane and Matthew. That was a great presentation, and I can testify to the fact it's such a beautiful space, having visited 2 weeks ago, and it looked great. So if anyone's in London, definitely make your way to Regent's Park to the Queen Elizabeth II garden. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. I'm just going to check in the first one, which is from Aldona, and I think she might be in Ireland because she references Dublin and the Bridgefoot Street Park. But she asks, how did you calculate how much of the materials should be recycled, reused to avoid the higgledy-piggledy look and feel? So that's her question to you.
Yeah, We kind of did a huge audit of materials and really tried our best to work out what volumes of materials we had. So whether that was made ground, concrete that could be crushed, and just we had lots of stockpiles of materials. It was a bit of a moving feast. We had made a certain amount of assumptions through trial digs. But actually we found there was some contamination in areas, and all of that was just constantly changing. The last building that we demolished actually had some contamination as well. So we'd got so far with that kind of revisiting the cut and fill, and in the end we had to bring in a small amount of additional concrete crush to kind of make up the last batch of soils. So I don't know if that answers the question actually, but yeah, it was a real challenge. I think for me that was one of the biggest challenges, but we had kind of made a decision that we didn't want to lose any material and we would use it where we could. But obviously we'd worked from the northern end of the garden to the south, and we'd set out some path levels, and we wanted the garden to be fully accessible. So there were certain things that we could not adjust once we'd kind of set that out.
Okay, thank you. There's a comment in the chat also, less a question, but more just a reflection that was very inspiring. And they'll be discussing how they can trial the slow garden movement here in Edinburgh. And that was from Linda. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Claire, can I just make a comment on the plant size actually, because I think it's maybe interesting. So because the pH is so high in there, when we planted into it, we've gone small, and it is easier for a small plant to adapt to that very, very sharp uplift, because mostly things are grown in peat-free multi-purpose compost with a roughly neutral pH. And literally a few shrubs we put in as bigger plants just for a little bit of impact. We kind of fell into a bit of a trap of, we should have a few bigger shrubs. They actually died and really struggled to adapt, and some of them have died back and they've rebalanced themselves. So holding your nerve and starting small in these very, very challenging high pH conditions concrete gives, I think, is a really crucial takeaway learning.
Yeah. Can I just add, I think in terms of that, we also work very closely with the comms team to try and get the message out about plant sizes and what we were trying to do, and that this was kind of a longer term thing, to try and manage expectations. But interestingly, we've been gathering visitor feedback from the garden from it opened, and actually the most the favorite item of anybody visiting the garden is actually the plantain. So that's it's good that either that messaging's work or they're really understanding and appreciating what we're trying to do.
And you can imagine that stakeholder management is external and internal for us, talking to trustees and committees and saying this is not going to look like the Chelsea Flower Show on day one. You will see all the crushed concrete between the plants. It looks gappy, the plants are small. It's meant to be like that. And just have faith, hold your nerve. So we had a lot of that kind of internal and external management.
Thank you, Matthew. I think that's useful information for Linda as well going forward in Edinburgh. So another question we've got here is, as this was such an innovative project with trialling new ideas around landscape and build, was there one overriding lesson that you learned as a team or individually that you feel would be valuable to anyone in the landscape garden sector embarking on a similar scheme?
I think, as Matt said, hold your nerve, just go for it. I think it was a massive learning project for us, and it was really interesting. There were so many different layers to it. And although, I think for me, my takeaway, we were actually quite well organized. I think there was a lot going on a very small constrained site. And it was just great to see all of that concrete crush being created. So yeah, I think I'm trying to think.
I think for me, definitely, if you're using building waste and you have a high pH, having that knowledge of what plants will cope, because it wasn't a case of just bang it in and see. We worked with Dr. Noel Kingsbury, who is an absolute horticultural hero. He really knows his stuff with prairie and step planting. So there wasn't the kind of there might be a 20% loss of plants. Noel really did know his stuff, and I think that's really helped the success of the garden.
Yeah. So know your soils, know your plants. I think that.
Yeah, definitely. Plant knowledge is always key, I think, and at the heart of it, it's the garden and the plants needed to work.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Another question, from inception to completion and now an open garden to the public, reflecting on the final product, is there anything you would change? It's a bit of a controversial question, but...
No, actually, I don't think so for me. I think it has worked really well and is really beautiful. I mean, we didn't probably showcase everything that we could, but there's some lovely, really lovely details. The quality and the finish is fantastic. Our contractor and the design team honestly did a great job. So there isn't really. I think we'd got the right team on board. Everybody got on so well. It has just been such a joyful project. I don't think there's a single thing I would change.
I'll be more controversial because I like to be. I know when I first was looking at the project, I didn't understand why we would keep the water tower, which became the folly. And there was definitely mixed views of, it's got no architectural value, get rid of it. And the other view in the room is, of course, it's part of the site's history. You know, do you keep something or do you erase everything? And ultimately, it was an industrial water tower. It was never meant to be a thing of beauty. I've now fallen in love with it. I think it's brilliant. And I think it's lovely how it's been made a viewing platform. But, you know, hopefully a lot of you will come and visit the garden and see for yourself. But I dare say that was probably the most discussed thing. Should it stay or should it go?
Thank you. Another question we've got is, how much did the whole project cost?
So around £5 million.
Okay.
So yeah, so that includes consultant fees and things as well. So yeah, around that mark.
Okay, thank you. And the final question was, well, actually to both of you, but I think Matt dealt with it in the presentation, was you talked about the ratio of concrete to soil and settling on 75-25. Did this mean you needed to take any materials off site that were surplus?
So, I mean, as Amanda mentioned, we actually ran out of concrete crush. So we did end up buying some in, but we did have to remove some material off site that was contaminated. So when we found the asbestos and the lead paint traces, so there was some disposals. It obviously just wouldn't have been safe to pretend that was okay. So they were removed, but we did actually need a bit more concrete crush. What we didn't want to do was just have an area of the pure Regent's Park clay soil, because the planting would have looked very strange and everything would have grown much richer. So we stayed true to the design and had to buy in a bit more concrete crush.
Yeah, just really to offset that material that we'd lost, really, because it was quite late in the project, as we were kind of down at the southern end in the final stages of the soil blending.
Okay, thank you both. I think that's all the questions we've got from the chat. So on that basis, thank you. And I'm just going to do a couple of reminders for World Urban Park Europe before we close. One is that our next committee meeting is on the 10th of September from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. That's Central European time, so that's midday in the UK. And our next webinar will be on the 14th of October at the same time. Look out for details. And finally, we will be arranging a World Urban Parks Europe study tour for spring 2027. So please look out for any information that we send out via the World Urban Parks Forum. But on that note, I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you in October for our next webinar.